If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hi, this is Variety Chenevert for Akashimedia Podcast Live. Want to give you an update on our listenership. Welcome, Algeria. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. USA, America. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Brazil. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Ireland. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Japan. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. United Kingdom. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Germany. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Canada. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. China. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Spain. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Egypt. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Italy. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. India. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. France. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Nigeria. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Panama. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Philippines. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Mozambique. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Czech Republic. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Argentina. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Belgium. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Russia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Singapore. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Ghana. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Mexico. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Sudan. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Australia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Morocco. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Syria. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Lebanon. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Netherlands. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Sweden. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Benin. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Guatemala. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Ivory Coast. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Costa Rica. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Gabon. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Colombia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Dominican Republic. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Puerto Rico. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Saudi Arabia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Uganda. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Malaysia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Taiwan. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Iran. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Peru. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Slovakia. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Kenya. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Portugal. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live, Switzerland. Thank you for listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. This is your podcasting host, Renee Chenevert. I am so happy that you all are listening, downloading, and streaming Akashimedia Podcast Live. You totally made my day. I am so grateful to be able to be in your homes and to be heard throughout the world, and I will continue to try to be as positive as I can and bring as much positivity as I can globally. Thank you so much. Keep listening to Akashimedia Podcast Live. Hi, this is Renee Chenevert for Akashimedia Podcast Live. This segment, I'm going to address something personal because I spoke with a relative by phone, and she was telling me that the woman that her aunt that raised me and kept me after my mother died has pancreatic cancer. And she said to me, she didn't let me know, and her daughters know about it, but they never called me up to let me know about it. And she's always been the type of person that has said that she wasn't going to let people know things like that if she got sick, but they do know. Our relationship has never been a really good, strong relationship. There have been a lot of different episodes, and then my cousin said to me, she said, well, she, has pancreatic cancer, and she, she said, do you want to come down here and see? She said, well, you can come down here. When you come down here, you can stay with me and whatever. I said, well, what's your address? She never gave me her address to come visit her. And I called her back and said, you didn't text me your address. She said, oh, okay, all right. I'll do it. And she never did, I said, well, if I come, I'm going to drive down probably, She said, well, can you, maybe leave your car somewhere? I'm like, no, I don't need to leave my car nowhere, If I come, I'm going to drive and have someone drive with me if I do come. So they're in Detroit, and she said to me, well, maybe you can just make some amends with her or whatever. Like, I'm thinking to myself, make amends how? For what? Like, make apologies for stuff. Apologies for what? There's nothing to make apologies for. What? For what? So this is where I'm at publicly, my mother was the founder of the Supremes, Florence Ballard. And I'm her first child. And I know that. And a lot of people know that. And I'm not a person to have a pity party about my mother's death or my life or what took place after she died or whether I had a good life after she died or whatever. I've never been someone who talked about my emotions, and there have been people who have said you shouldn't hold things in, you should let it out, and I've never done that, particularly to the people that were around me, because I knew as a child that people were not for us or for me, that I had these feelings for. That's why today You have people saying all on my social media, she's not real. She's not Florence's daughter. Because I was in the media for a little while, up until my mother died. And when I became a teenager, I say about 14, Mary Wilson, came over to the house and said, hey, there's going to be an art exposition for your mom. Do you want to come? I said, yeah, I went, and then I got teary-eyed. That was the first time I had been back in the media since I was 9 at her funeral. So years later, when I became a teenager, it wasn't that long after I became a teenager, but, it was a few years later, but I wasn't ready. And then I had a video again that was done that said I said on this video that my mom, Flo, was my aunt. I did say that. That was just something I said because, again, I was not ready to be in the media. I was shocked. I wasn't expecting to even do this video. I was asked to do this video. There was someone who was affiliated with Motown who did the interview. So I wasn't expecting it. It was unexpected. People remember me. There are a lot of people who remember me and remember what I look like. A lot of people called me Rosalind growing up. My mother called me Rosalind growing up as well. She called me Nichole and Rosalind, growing up. So when my mother died, it was not, my mother and my father both died, young. My father died 6 months earlier than my mother. So I'm a person who has had to live with lies itself from the beginning because of the media. I had to deal with people who had control because they worked at the welfare office, because they were social workers, because they worked at the foster care, or had control within the foster care system, or because they knew people at the birth certificate register's office, or they can slip $50 through somebody and say, change this, change that. I had to deal with that then, and I have to deal with it now. I have 4 grandkids and a 34-year-old daughter. And they're even today saying, that's not your grandmother. She's not real. She's not your mother's mama. And stuff like that. And so, the only thing I got for my grandchildren and my daughter is a DNA ancestry test. To let them know, this is who I am, this is who you are. And with that ancestry test, I match other relatives that match the Ballards, that match Florence, that pop up. Which to me, it was a great thing, but I did the test because I knew that I had Native American. I have everything my mother has. I had Native American, I had European descendant, African descendant, Asian descendant, but I just didn't know what my percentage was until I did my DNA test. People have still tried to find my birth certificate or ask for it. Can I see it? Or this and that. Stuff like that. There are a lot of things that have been changed over the years. There are people who worked at the newspaper, Detroit News, that said things in the news. And people who dated people who worked at the newspaper in Detroit that would go back and tell their significant other things about my mother that wasn't true and have them writing up and printed up. So I went through a lot of things growing up as a child. And then to try to come back at me again a second lifetime with my own kid and grandchildren and lie to them and act like this is not real, this doesn't exist. Some of these people worked at my mother's house. I know who was my butler. I know who was my maid. I know who was my babysitter. I lived this life with this woman, welfare or not. I lived through the fact that there was jealousy around. People wanted their kids on top because they thought her kids was going to outshine them and they didn't want them to. I wasn't trying to shine anybody anyway, but that's their mindset. So they had to get in their circle of tightness that they had to keep things going the way that they did and have all the way up until now. Some people are deceased, some are not. And then they want to come up with, over the years, she's crazy, she's crazy, she's crazy, she's crazy, she's crazy. But that's not true, because I saw who murmured and spoke out loud and talked to themselves. And I guarantee you it wasn't my mother, Florence Ballard. So, I do not feel that there's nothing for me to apologize for. Because these are people who feel like they never need to apologize to me because they've never done anything to me in their eyes. But what they have done is plot things consistently. This woman and her family plotted to take my daughter from me from California, and they did. I left Detroit because I went to college. So therefore, they didn't like that. You know, they had issues, you know. So it was my fault that I let my daughter visit Detroit. I should have never done that. During this visit, they went and got guardianship behind my back. They did the same thing they did to me when I was a child. And got guardianship. My mother, Florence Ballard, was not even in the courtroom with me when these women and their family on their side went and got guardianship of me. All they wanted was a judgment of a piece of paper so they could get money, and that was it. I live not with one person on record, not one, that was in that courtroom. Not one. They did the same thing to my daughter. So, I'm emotional in my own way of expressing this because they think there's big time shot seniority over me because my daughter's there. My daughter, number one, is my daughter, and she knows God. We read the Bible every day together. But I know their lifestyle from their past. So I know who did what. I know what woman liked to sleep with kids, young boys, strippers, prostitutes, gay women, so on and so forth, have mental issues. Everyone want to focus on the mental issue.
Let me tell you something. I don't have a mental issue. And as far as I'm concerned, my mother didn't really have one either. It wasn't abnormal for my mother to be heartbroken about being fired from Motown. It was normal for her to have the emotions that she had. She started the group. She started the Supremes. It wasn't abnormal or anything mentally ill that was out of the norm for her to feel what she felt. She started the group. She gave backstabbers a job. She gave people a job to be in a group, to become famous, and then they want to kick her ass out and misplace her and replace her. So it wasn't abnormal to feel what she felt. My mother behind the scenes was a very calm woman. She didn't have no anger like you thought she would. She was heartbroken, but behind the scenes, when they kept coming back and forth, and just nitpicking, and instigating, my mother was a very calmed woman. My mother was someone who did not lose her temper. At least not around me, she didn't. My mother kept a clean house at all times. And I mean spotless. Those who think that she was mentally ill or say she was mentally ill or wrote these things had a house full of roaches. Nasty, filthy, dirty clothes and everything. Some of them needed a man to come along to help them out, to help them to become better and just keeping a home together. My mother wasn't that type of person. My mother always held it together. We had food on the table. We had clean clothes. We were never dirty. As you can see, if you go and image my mother combing my hair, she's doing my hair. I look decent. Put it to you this way. If my mother, Florence Ballard, was mentally ill, she was the kind that knew how to take care of herself. That's not a power of control that she lost. My mother still had money in the bank of our piggy banks. My mother saved her money. While other people was walking around like they're so big shot, this and that, they didn't even have what we had on the bottom, so they say, while they're on top, running around being the stars. My mother didn't even have a drug problem. I was a straight A student all the time, or S's and O's. Back then they gave us S's and O's as well. So, I'm at a point in my life where I just let people who keep their cahoots and their tight circle going, because I'm not a part of their circle or their games. Because I'm a mother and I'm a grandmother. And, you know, these people come from a place of headbangers. They feel like they want to beat up somebody. They try to make them into what they want them to be. They want to talk about people and have other people talk about people and their kids and say things about people and have an attitude. I brush all that off. I've always been that type of person. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm a fire sign. So I can take a lot of shit. And it don't bother me because I'll start writing a book about your ass. I'm a great writer. Best believe that. So, not only was I aware of things, but teachers were aware of things. You know, people would say things and they don't even remember what they said. You know, but I tell you what, this is where I'm at with the situation. This woman wanted to erase my mother like she was never my mother. Create new documents or whatever the case is and act like she never existed. Not even have a father's name on a new birth certificate that they created. I'm not going to give you that. Everyone else can say, your mother, did you call your mother up today? You know, to her, to them, it's seniority to them. For whatever reason, they got favor. That's my mama. I sat there in front and looked at her in her casket. Doesn't matter. They planned it all along. That we're going to erase all of this and she's never going to be known as that. I'm going to be this and that. Woo, 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 woo. To you, you're that. To me, you're not. I don't give nobody else that mothership but the woman that had me. I'm still Nichole. I'm still her first child. And that's the way it's going to stay and be. So, my thing is this. I remember everything that I went through during that time. There are people who said we're going to make sure she's no longer in the papers anymore. She's not known anymore. This and that, so on and so forth. Whatever. So once they did that, then here come Rhonda. They put Rhonda there. So she can get all of the attention and this and that. You know. But she was a sweet kid anyway. So, you know, she deserved that. For whatever they needed to do. And but these are things that I had to deal with just being in the family, period. If it's money, there's something left. Oh, and there's no money. When such and such died, there was no money. There ain't nothing there. Mama didn't have no money. Mama, there wasn't nothing this. You know, they're just gonna pass on to somebody else, create a new will, create a new trust, do what they're gonna do, whatever they're gonna do, have somebody else move into the house, whatever they're gonna do. That's just how they operate. You know. My daughter is smart. She's smart. You know. This family has tried to make my daughter hate me. Turn her against me. Keep her from me. They'll come up with a story and say, oh, I abandoned her. No, I didn't abandon her because when I left Detroit, she was with me. She's been to schools in California. They come way out here to get guardianship back in Detroit. You should see the things that they say to me on Facebook and stuff and emails. It's amazing. And none of it is true. But they tell other people that. You know. I have witnessed so much that you just wouldn't believe. I have someone tonight that just sent me a text message. And she's a medium. A medium is a psychic. And she sent me a text message and she said, do you know this doctor or this nurse? Because I feel from what I have in this vision that this person has something to do with what happened to your mother. I said, well, I responded to that. I said, if you go to the images of the funeral, you see a nurse sitting there. What's more to say? You know, an undisclosed name nurse sitting there at the funeral, looking at Michelle. And the look that she's giving Michelle is like, I can't wait to get hold of this kid and beat her up or something. You know, these people have done a lot of dirt. A lot of dirt. And because they have they so close, tight relationships with each other, and they keep it tight together, you know, they've been able to get away with stuff. Over and over and over and over and over again. You know. And people like that, if you never do jail time, they just gonna keep doing it. Over and over and over again. You know. But I see them how they're trying to replay things out with my daughter. Because my daughter looks like my mother Florence. That was my gift from my mama. She gave me a child, a daughter, because I was in the world alone by myself. I wasn't raised with Michelle or Lisa. We were separated all our lives. I've never been raised with her. Even when mom was alive, she wasn't in the home with me. She was somewhere else. I don't really try to, because the thing about my mother and her death is that people are not satisfied with her death. They're not happy about her death. Fans, people who were friends of friends or relatives, or people who were there at a certain time. I've met certain people that have recollected my memory of some things and events that took place when we were kids and stuff. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. That sure did. We did do that. Wow. You know, so certain people who said that they were certain things, they remember them too and said, no, that's not who that was. Such and such was this instead. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Sure it was, you know. So, I don't really worry about those things. But you know what's so unique? It's that my mom was supposed to be a woman who had mental illness, that supposedly had mental medication, supposedly. But it never affected me. I don't know if they gave her anything, injections or whatever they was giving her, supposedly during pregnancy. But I tell you one thing. I don't stick with the mental illness story with my mother, Florence Ballard of the Supremes. I'm her daughter, Variety Chenevert. I changed my name from the name that they gave me after she died, or whatever document they changed. I changed my name to Variety Chenevert, but my name was still Nichole. Somewhere, you know. But I tell you one thing. I'll never stick by the story of my mother being mentally ill. And I tell you why. Because my mother was on stage for 8 years with the Supremes, or 10 years with the Supremes on stage performing with an applauding audience. 10 years straight. Ain't no way in the hell you got somebody with schizophrenic on stage like she was applauding the Supremes of all cultures, screaming and clapping. No way. No way. A schizophrenic person cannot stay on top like that. She would have been gone a long time ago. And she did not have stage fright. She felt no other place to be but to be on stage. My mother loved being a singer. It would have bothered her in church. So I'll never, ever stick to that story of my mother being a schizophrenic. Ever. But I know who was a schizophrenic. I know who did angel dust. I know who lost their minds. I know. And she knew. I know who did drugs. I know who had a white husband. I know the mixed children that they had. I know their names. I don't care if they tell people to forget about me, because I will never forget you. Ever. You can be pretentious all you want, but I'm not going to forget you. You can keep your cahoots tight circle, even in Hollywood if you want to. With the next, with the next, with the next. I don't care. Because I remember you. I don't have to sit underneath people to get stories about Florence Ballard, because I lived it. Whatever I tell, I lived it. I don't get it from gossip. I don't get it trying to be friends with other people. Whatever I tell, I lived it. If I remember it, then it happened. Now, this thing with this woman who kept me, even when my mom was alive, did a lot of shit to people. When my father died, she did nothing but smile at it. When my mother died, she came into the house, came into the room, and smiled at that. I wanted to knock the hell out of her. I am not an angry person, but I do get emotional when I tell my story, because it is my experience that I have experienced. I have told people before about what I feel about Diana Ross and Berry Gordy. And I'm going to say this again. There have been other public events that Berry Gordy has been on stage with supposedly all of Florence Ballard's children, and I was not there. So I am not Nichole Chapman. I'm Nichole, her daughter, Ballard, the first child, the chocolate one, put it that way. And my Aunt Maxine put me in her book. Thank you. I appreciate that. And didn't forget about me. But she put me in her book to let the world know the real Nichole was a chocolate drop. Love you, Maxine, for that. Thank you, Auntie. But she let the cousin go on in my place and didn't say nothing. Let them do what they do and been doing. But you can see in her book the true story about Florence Ballard, written by my Aunt Maxine. When you see the little pretty brown-eyed girl with the wide nose and the big eyes, that's me. That's variety. That's the real Nichole with an H, not without the H. So, but that's how they played it out. But she let the world know. And I knew she would say to herself, don't leave this world without showing the world who my child is. And she put the real photograph of the real daughter in her book. That was the right thing to do. She had to honor my mother that way. She was her sister. So, and I love her for that. Because, see, in this business, people got this color complex thing going on. Well, light skin and brown skin. And I didn't grow up with all of that. But that's how they treat situations. You know, people hook on that type of stuff. I don't know why, but that's just what they were. You know, a child can't help how they come out, whether they light skin, dark skin, or whatever. You can't help how God made you. You don't have no control of that. So, my thing is that this woman would not get that credibility from me as being my mother. And I tell you why. My daughter has been raped in Detroit. She has never picked up the phone and told me that. She allowed it to happen. My mother would never do that. And to me, that's not a mother. No one in the family picked up the phone to tell me that. My daughter got stabbed 16 times by a guy. She never picked up the phone and told me that. My mother would never do that to me. My mother have always had my best interest. My mother would never let people financially rape my child or financially hurt my child. I went back to Detroit to get my daughter before, on more than one occasion, and brought her back. One day, she came back out here when I was working and took her back again and came up with the story. So, when I got to court, my daughter said she didn't want to come back to LA. So, that's how things transgress with her, because she said, of course, she didn't want to come. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't want to come back home. What? You got basketball. You about to become a basketball player, you know? And that was the situation. So I was angry at that. I was mad and hurt and mad and upset that I had to go home without my child that I've been with all her life. This is when she was a teenager. just turned teenager. But you know what? I don't blame my daughter because she didn't know what she was talking about. She didn't have no sense. She didn't understand. She was misguided. And I don't hold that against her. It was my fault that I let her visit these crazy ass motherfuckers. Excuse my French. This is a podcast that is explicit language. So, I can't give anyone that. I can't even call you family, because they don't call me that either. That's good. That's cool, because I don't see you like that either. My family that I grew up with would never keep something like that from me and feel like I'm not important to call up. They feel like they're big time shots because they got a piece of paper in court, because they lied about it. I ain't never had a bad problem with myself. I've never been on drugs. I've never been on alcohol. I've never been a prostitute. I've never stole from anybody. I've never done anything to anyone. But these people have always had an attitude about stuff. Nobody wanted me to have a car or look nice or have this or have that. I had to wait until I became an adult to do for myself. Money that I had in the bank, been gone. There's money that I had that my father gave me. I put it in the bank account. It was supposed to be in a trust. 2 other people were on the account. And every time I turned around, I saw negative coming out my checkbook. Negative coming out the checkbook. Next thing you know, they get a checkbook to somebody else. Oh my God, I've been through so much. People have bought houses and everything, cars and everything with my money over the years. They never bought me nothing, never bought my daughter nothing. My daughter would tell you today, they don't do nothing for me and my kids. They'll come to your house, to your birthday party without a gift. I sent my daughter $300 for her birthday. It was going to be $3,000, but something said no, just send her $300. Do you know they came to her birthday party this year and stole her $300 out of her purse? This year. She just had a birthday on August 26th, and they came to her party and stole her money because they wanted to feel like if I want to take what her mama gave her. That's their mindset. I don't want her to have no money with she in. You know, they real crazy like that. You know. But see, I grew up around a multicultural family when my mother was alive. So when all these black folks, which is all black folks, yeah, I knew I wasn't with family. Automatically. I grew up with Asians, whites, Arabs, you name it. I knew when it was all black, yeah, something wrong. This ain't it. Because this is not how I was raised. And I know what my people look like. You know. So, everybody start coming up with these stories again. You know. But it's okay. All I'm going to say is, I have nothing to apologize for. The only apology I got is to my daughter. I'm sorry for letting you go to Detroit and visit. It changed both of our lives around. They don't want you to be happy. They don't want me to be happy. In fact, this woman said to me, when my daughter was born, I want you to suffer. I said, okay. I didn't suffer much, but she put me through some things, but I got over it. My father was shot multiple times in the abdomen, but now she's dying of pancreas cancer, so her niece say. Okay. Sound like karma. So, I myself, I let things go. I'm a Buddhist. I was talking to someone who's been close to the family for a while, and they said, you know, I do Yahweh, you know. I said, okay, but is that Hebrew? You know, And we were talking about this for about 2 hours on the phone, about Yahweh and everything. So it just came basically to the conclusion of, okay, the Bible is still the same thing. So what it is that it's just that you call Jesus a different name, which is Yahweh. He's called Jehovah, he's called something else, he's called something else. So, but you still believe in the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. You still believe in the same scripture, so it doesn't matter. So, I myself have a very strong spiritual side, and I have a spiritual side that I started having dreams about a timeline in Hebrew language. And so when God speaks to me, he ain't speaking in English. It's in Hebrew. So I see myself as a person of a spirit that had to been with God at a different timeline where he spoke to me in Hebrew. And he's not going to translate it from Hebrew to English. So I feel that in my dreams, I feel he's saying to me, figure it out what I'm saying to you in Hebrew, because that's the language you spoke. That's the language I'll speak to you. And that's what it is. Learn Hebrew. Find Hebrew. You find Hebrew. You find a translation. You go to a Berlitz audio tape or something and find out how to speak Hebrew and write Hebrew. That's your job. That's what I get from these dreams. And that's just how God works. You know, my middle name is Renee. And my grandmother helped come up with my name. And Renee means writer. And I had a dream. Well, actually, I was waking up from a dream. Not even waking up from a dream. I was waking up early in the morning, like 7 in the morning, on my birthday of 2019. And a voice said to me, "You didn't finish your book." And I woke up and I started laughing. And it sounded like my grandmother. I said, "I must finish my book. I'm going to finish it." I started laughing. Okay, so I started writing again right after that. Because I write, stop, write, stop, write, stop, write, stop. Because things have to come to me in order. Or I have to shift it around to what I see. And I have to just switch it around to what order it's supposed to be in for the book. So, I have forgiven people in a way where I do Taoism. And Liquid Spring of Light helps me do that. I read this book, Divine Transformation by Dr. Shah. It's a great book. You should buy it. Dr. Shah. Divine Transformation. I buy all his books. That book has a mantra, and it says to forgive others in this lifetime and your past lifetimes. Forgive what they have done to you and forgive what you have done to them in this lifetime and these past lifetimes. That's the mantra that I say. So I don't need to go to anyone and say, oh, they want me to feel like I need to humble to them. I don't do that. I let it go. I do my mantras. Apologize for this lifetime and past lifetimes. I did twice. Because I pray about everything before I do it. I read on the internet about Josh money. Joss. Josh money. It's heaven money. It's heaven money. And in Asian culture, they believe that what's done on earth is also done in heaven. They believe that in heaven, people drive cars, people have clothes and things like that. And I believe that. And let me tell you why I believe it. Before I even started burning Josh money, heaven money for ancestors. I was in my apartment one day in the bathroom, and I opened up my door, and there was a spirit in my house of a man that looked homeless. He was putting on my clothes. He was trying my clothes on. I had a black turtleneck sweater, and he was putting it on. Freaked me out. I just stood there and looked at him like, you know. And the spirit was dark, but he still needed clothing. So that's why I believe, yes, on the other side, spiritually, they do need clothing. I didn't say anything to the spirit. I just looked at it. And I said to myself, wow, the spirit is not in heaven. It's still on earth. And there are a lot of spirits that's still on earth, walking the earth, roaming the earth. But they need clothing. Just like the Invisible Man movies. It was just like that. And I didn't know if he was a relative. I was trying to really look at him because he had weight on him. But it was amazing. It was really amazing. So I did burn Josh money. I had an uncle who died before his lawsuit came through. He died of lung cancer. And I bought Josh money on Amazon. It was for $1 trillion. And I wrote on it. I said, Uncle Rich, I said, I'm sending you this $1 trillion bill because you were so good to me during your time here on earth. You did the best you could for me when you were here. And you didn't get a chance to enjoy your lawsuit settlement prior to your death. You were ill. So I'm sending you this $1 trillion bill, heaven money, for you to enjoy life on the other side. To buy yourself something nice. You always wanted to buy yourself a nice Jaguar, and you never could afford it. It was an older model Jaguar, an antique type of Jaguar. And I said, here's the money, enjoy life in heaven. And I wrote it on there, love your niece. And I burnt that Josh money in a red envelope, Chinese envelope. And I did this for a couple ancestors. They all got $1 trillion apiece. Let me tell you about each experience. I burnt the Josh money. And I would say a few weeks later, maybe a month or a few weeks later or so, my uncle appeared in my dream. He was dressed from head to toe, wearing a fedora. He loved them fedoras. Dressed from head to toe, coordinated, matching, wearing a tanned suit, a tan caramel colored suit, like from head to toe, everything matched, same color. He even had a briefcase in his hand. He was standing at a place that looked like a bank, and he had on a pair of sunglasses. He was sharp. He looked like somebody. I was like, my God, it worked. It's real. This child's money is real. Then I had an aunt. I sent her $1 billion or $1 trillion bill. Her birthday came, and she came in my dream, and she loved Christmas. She was dressed in Christmas ornaments and was smiling like, I'm enjoying this. Thank you. Christmas in June, because her birthday was in June, and she was smiling and everything. Had Christmas ornaments wrapped all around her, like, I'm having a great time. My father, I sent him $1 trillion bill. The next time I saw him, he was in my dream. He was driving a new car through the tunnel. My uncle, I sent him like $1 billion bill. He had a new apartment or condominium and opened up the door, was dressed professional like he used to dress when he worked at American Express, and opened up the door and was inviting friends over at a brand new lavish place. Another relative passed. She loved swings when she was a kid. She's talking about how she would swing. She had a adult swing and was swinging back and forth, back and forth. Because when I sent this money to heaven, I also paid my tithes with it. I said, Lord, I had one stack, it had 100 of them. So here's $100 trillion. Do whatever you need to do in heaven with it, plus it pays my tithes. And I put tithes on some of the bills, my tithes. And then in case you need to decorate heaven or something like that, upgrade heaven or whatever, I did that. And I guess it I guess it probably works or something, So these are things that took place for giving, and I wrote on the money. These are for my ancestors who come before me in life. Those may be after me or whatever gonna happen. I wrote for my ancestors from the tribes of Kenya, India, wherever, all of those who are connected to me in some kind of way of my lineage. This is for you all to help each other in heaven. Do what y'all need to do, share it or whatever. And I had some great feedback from it. I really did. I just believe in those type of things, I'm really strong in Asian culture because I am part Asian as well. And I love Asian culture because Asian culture and African culture have a lot of healing. Indian culture as well. Herbs and dealing with the herbs and the spices. the foods and everything. There are a lot of things that they dealt with, which is all about healing, 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 and healing. You know. So that's what I deal with. There was a woman that was that caught on fire. And this is an experience that happened because I did catch the Holy Spirit before this incident happened with her. She caught on fire, and she was a relative. She was in intensive care. And I came to the hospital to see her. She said, all these people came in the hospital, was laying hands on me, and none of these people healed me like you did. All I did was put my hand in her hand, and she was in intensive care. She was supposed to die within 24 hours. And I laid my hand in her hand, and she grabbed it. I was like, oh my God, you about to break my hand off. You squeezing it so hard, and my knuckles cracked. She squeezed it so hard because she heard my voice, and I said, I'm here. And the next morning, she had been in intensive care for about a week or two before they finally called me and said she's going to be transcended. So when I came in, I laid my hands in her hand. She grabbed it. She could hear me. And she had strength in her hand. And the next morning, she was sitting up in the bed, drinking water. She said, hey, good morning. I didn't do nothing but just stare at her. And I looked at my best friend, Darren. We stared at each other, and we looked at each other like, huh? She didn't even have the abscess and the weight on her and the pus that she had when she caught on fire. She was really bloated and raw like a hot dog. She was real brown skinned at first, but raw like a hot dog. The next day, we went back to see her. She had black dots in her face. Her skin color was coming back. And all of the water, toxic liquid that was in her, drained out on its own. Either she peed it out or whatever it was. She didn't have nothing like she did the 12 hours before, or how many hours it was before then. I mean, she looked like huge with water and everything. And I lay hands on her. She was sitting up with no water in her. Amazing. Totally amazing. So I said, wow. And she said, do you know how many people came up in this hospital room laying hands on me? About 20. About 20. She said, those people do not have healing hands. I was reading Bibles and everything. And she said, that nobody do what you just did. I said, wow. So, I just go with the flow. And I just let God do whatever He's going to do. And I deal with things in my own closet with God. However way I need to be close to Him and deal with my spirituality with Him. If it's through Taoism, Buddhism, reading mantras of something written by an Asian priest. If that's what's going to help me, that's what I do. And I talk to God about it. Is this right or wrong or whatever? Evidently, it's been right. Because things have been going pretty well. You know? Because just because you say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus all day, don't mean that's how a person is really living. So, I just do what I have to do to better myself as a person. Because I had to see God on my own as a child. Because I was around people who didn't believe in God. I was around people who dealt with the Ouija boards and all that stuff. So I had to see God on my own. I had to go to church by myself because they wasn't into church. They may say, oh, bring me a plate of food when you come back from church. And I would bring them a church dinner, church plate dinner with food. But that was about it. But I never went to church with them. There are people I didn't go to church with that just wasn't into it like that. So, I let people be who they are. I don't try to change people. All I can say is that the forgiveness is done already. This person is the type of person that would say, I have nothing to be sorry for and I don't apologize to people. But I did send them this same book with divine transformation to them in the past. And I sent it to my daughter. In Rainbow Liquid Spring of Light, I told my daughter, I believe you survived at 16 stabbings because of the liquid spring of light. And if you read that book and you believe in what you read, then I believe that's why you're here, along with my prayers of being a mother and praying for you. Because it doesn't matter if a person is racist or if they call people nigger or whatever the case is. You are what you think. And you are what you believe in. So if you ever think that somebody is a nigger, then you believe you can be one too. Or you believe you are one too. Because you are what you think, and you can become what you think. Or you can become what you believe in. So sometimes it's just not for the other person, for you to say that. It's really for you. So I try to put out positive messages on my podcast. Because I feel it's my calling in some kind of way to do that. And to let people know I have people against me. Even right now today. They broke up my little family of just a mother and a daughter. Just because they didn't want to see her with me. Just because I give my daughter a lot of love. These are people who want to beat up a child. For no reason. Just because they want to. People wanted to see, did I need this child for money? No. I'm the mama. I take care of you. Same thing my mother used to tell me. So I worked and took care of my daughter. But no, not them. They'll go down there and say some other stuff. They'll use homelessness. We all had an earthquake. What can we do with a natural disaster? We wasn't even homeless. FEMA took care of that. Move on. They don't even live here. But no, there are people who will lie and say things. There's one event that my daughter and I went to, not too far. I don't think it was not too long, or it was before the earthquake or so. It was something. We didn't know it was said it was for the community. And back then, in the 90s, Skid Row didn't look like it did then. Downtown LA didn't look like what it looks like now. It was nothing like that. It was just like a community of people. And I've never been downtown before. It's my first time downtown. And I think this was in a newspaper or they was advertising it on TV. And we just went to this event because it's supposed to be for kids and stuff. Because when I was growing up, for stuff doing for Christmas, it was J.L. Hudson's. We used to go to J.L. Hudson's for Christmas to do things at the mall at J.L. Hudson's, downtown Detroit. So that's what I was thinking, like, oh, this must be like a J.L. Hudson's thing when I was little. But it was outside, and it was all these people, and they was giving out stuff for kids. So this guy from the newspaper came up and took a picture of me and my daughter. He asked for my name, and then he put us in the newspaper as being homeless. And then my cousin got a hold of this newspaper article, because she read the newspaper every day, and sent it back home to people in Detroit. So they thought that we were homeless. I said, no, we're not homeless. We live in West Hollywood. And she said, she showed me the newspaper. She said, well, there's a newspaper right there, job picture in it, and y'all homeless. I said, oh, we're not homeless. I said, this is a homeless event. Like, oh my God, they put me in the newspaper as homeless. Look at this. And my daughter looked at it like, what? And I guess that was the beginning of why they wanted to take my daughter from me in Detroit through a court. But I didn't leave my daughter there. We came back home and everything. But that was the first time I ever let my daughter travel and let someone from Detroit to come visit and let her visit, whatever, and it was my birthday time, so I wanted some me time, and that was the first time. And then, snowstorms happened, and then after that, they tried to, they went on ahead, and I don't know how they got guardianship down there, but they did. But it was weird because even at that time, I didn't even know that Detroit had schools closing. 100 schools were closed. I didn't even know that. It's like, what? I don't know what judge would give a child somebody guardianship like that, and they got 100 schools closed in their city. That was a strange situation. Strange. And then the judge that my daughter had robbed Rosa Parks' estate. He was crooked. Another book. But anyway, this is just something I needed to get off my chest today, because I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to leave things as they are in a way, because my daughter, I'm just going to pray for her to come home, because I'm her mother and my grandkids. And I know that these people think that they're going to repeat what they did to Flo. And I told my daughter, I'm not going for the job thing that you tell me about, because I already know. Most of these people have already worked in the mental health area, because that's where they feel comfortable at. They feel like they can ask you to take courses and things like that. Get involved with something dealing with mental health. They have family members who are psychologists, so they feel they got the power to, well, they do, because they got little doctors, and to write things up and say, create files and records. And I said, at the end of the day, Kristen, Kimba, I'm your mother. I had you. And you were not born with any mental illness. And it's nothing that I want to dishonor, but I know my child. If you had something wrong, I would know. And you have not. I just try to be the best mom that I can be, and my daughter is definitely a good mother herself. She's a great mom. But I cannot and I will not give people a place where they try to feel like they are seniority over my mother. They've done enough already with getting rid of her from the groups, wanting to end things, her credibility, put a defamation of her character out there, call her crazy, and stuff like that. say things about her being on welfare. I know for a fact that there are people who got a job at the welfare office and invited Florence Ballard to the welfare for a job. They said the welfare office is hiring. Why don't you go look for a job there? She did. That's not the reason why she was at the welfare office. Not on that occasion with me. I, myself, I'm satisfied with Dream Girls. Why? Because that was me sitting on the end of that aisle with Berry Gordy. Me. And you don't see a twin there at the welfare office. You see only me, the child. And in the lines of Dream Girls, she didn't say, oh, I had 2 more kids. She said, yeah, I had a daughter about 7-8 years ago. That's me. So I don't care about people using complexion because I was born dark skinned. And in the movie Dream Girls, the child was dark skinned that Florence had. I'm good. So, to some people it was just a movie. I let it go. Because I know the truth. And I know Berry Gordy knows the truth. I know people from Motown knows the truth. And they're not all probably in the same relationship with the same people. Maybe they are, maybe they not. But I tell you one thing. The majority of these people remember me. And they know what I look like. And they know that Florence Ballard also called her daughter Rosalind. Why? Because her sister wanted her to. Her sister came up with that name. Rosalind. So, and I know that Nichole Chapman has never been called Rosalind. I'm going to end this particular segment because I've been over an hour. Forgiveness is for me. And I've done that already in my own way. With God. In the midst, in the presence. Because my daughter didn't deserve to be mistreated. My daughter didn't deserve to be raped. My daughter didn't deserve to be beat up by kids at school. My daughter didn't deserve to be molested by men and women in Detroit. My daughter didn't deserve to be stabbed. My daughter has that same sweet spirit as my mother, Florence. And I'm going to do everything that I can to leave my daughter what I can. I have a lifetime partner by the name of Shadrach Michael Oyibo in Nigeria, from Nigeria, who owns real estates with me. We got 50 blocks of real estate. We own the White Deck Resort Hotel in Nigeria. And we've had this relationship for 20 years. Through marriage, my grandchildren and my daughter are heirs. Whether I have a divorce or marriage, I have a will. And they will heir whatever Shadrach Michael Oyibo owns. and he's an attorney in real estate. However, I'm a notary public. And by law, I can notarize my husband's documents too. I also went to school in real estate, have real estate. I went to school for construction. He designs and build, I design and build. I went to school also for architecture. I went to school for interior designing and upholstery. I know what he knows. We have a car dealership. Whatever we got, these kids got. It doesn't matter what woman is in the picture that don't want nobody to get. I'm the wife, I'm the mother, I'm the grandmother, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure that my works are written up correctly for them to air what they need. And I will let it be known the past that I had with people that didn't give to me because they felt like I didn't deserve it, or it was just too much for one child to have. Because someone came along and said, I got 3 kids. And I don't even get that kind of money. And that's just too much money for one child to have. So they needed to take what I had to give it to their 3 kids. This is Variety Chenevert for Akashimedia Podcast Live. The first child born of Florence Glenda Ballard, the founder of the Supremes. This is part of my story. I told the story today because someone in the family, a relative, felt that I needed to have some words for the woman who kept me after my mother passed and during the time that my mother was going through things. She's done some things to me that I just didn't like, but I let it go in my own way. There's only one woman that gave life to me, and that's Florence Glenda Ballard. No one is going to take that throne from my mother. It doesn't matter if you change birth certificate, documents, or whatever you've done. I'm grateful. Thank you for keeping the roof over my head that my bank account paid for. I appreciate it. Other than that, may God continue to bless you. That's all I'm going to say. I really don't have nothing else to say. I don't wish you pain and suffering of pancreas cancer that your niece said you have. Just let it go. Because maybe it's your time to talk to God and tell him you're sorry for something. And if you're not, then it's all right. You go the way you want to go. Other than that, I love my daughter, Kristen, and mother is sorry for letting you go to Detroit when I did. I shouldn't have let you be around people that didn't like me and hated me, and that wanted to break up our family and tear a child apart from their mother for no reason, just because they couldn't stand me, didn't like me, and didn't want you to have a good life. Jealousy, whatever the case may be. You're a good mother today because I was a good mother to you. My grandchildren, Chance, Kamaya, Kenneth, and Tion, I love them all. They're my grandbabies. And my daughter and my grandchildren and my spouse, family, is all that I got at this moment besides God. However, God is always the center of my life and always have been. And I know that I've always had a good relationship with God, but I have had my own journey too, with the have and the have-nots. And I have found my own peace because I know revenge is not my calling. Let vengeance be the Lord. And I'm going to let the Lord handle this. Because no family would sit back and let somebody rape and beat somebody's child and not call their mama. That's not real with me. But it is from where they come from. But history repeats itself with people because they develop habits. And after a while, they become predictable. I'm going to let it go. Because it's the best thing to do, to let it go. But I'm going to continue to keep my daughter in prayer. Because she belongs to God. And God can be her mother and her father. And He's a God that never sleeps. And I know they're working on this situation because they feel this is just the norm. Keep peace in your life. Keep your mind right. Don't let no one take you away from God. Stay prayerful. Meditate. Stay in control of yourself. We all make mistakes in life. I made a mistake in life. Stay humble. Continue to be blessed. And bless yourself when others are trying to curse you or hurt you. Stay blessed. Keep moving forward. Keep going to God anyway. Because He can see things before they happen, before they even happen. And ask God for a relationship of prayer that He can reveal to you and give you vision and answers to let you know when things are going to happen in your life. Let Him give you a psyche kind of power so you can see, hear, or know, or dream of what's coming or what's going on in your life with people around you. That's a gift that God can give you. Ask for it. Because that will stop you as well from being at the wrong place at the wrong time and falling into somebody else's that someone is trying to hurt you. Go on your instincts. You know it's always the first instinct, not the second. The second one is of doubt, and that's the one you will regret. Always go on your feeling. Your gut feeling in your heart, you know. Have a blessed day, globally, from Variety Chenevert, Akashimedia Podcast Live. Thank you for listening.